Channel 19 in Toronto, Channel 7 in Timmins.
How Will You Manage is next, but first, this message.
As a new manager, you may feel like you're suffering from information overload, and that taking a course on how to manage might just add to the burden. But did it occur to you that it could, in fact, solve your problem? Your TVO Viewer's Guide gives you the survival skills you need to deal with your new information and people requirements. For instance, in this first module on getting started, you have a guided tour through the important first days on the job. The guide directs your attention to the crucial positive and negative actions you can perform. And it shows you how to get yourself organized so that you escape the information overload syndrome. Now, if you're worried about the time factors involved in this course, the guide is expertly designed to facilitate your fast comprehension of topics. Important ideas are highlighted. Chapter content, summaries, and bulleted learning objectives tell you exactly what you'll be getting for your reading time. Topics are clearly outlined and broken down. For instance, in this Getting Organized chapter, the 4 steps required are listed, and then these steps are broken down into their own component activities. You can receive this valuable management tool by registering for How Will You Manage? We'll tell you how to register at the end of the program. Be sure to stay tuned.
Well, we've had 3 reorganizations in the space of the last 9 months, and I'm supposed to keep my department functioning.
I know it's needed to improve my department, but my boss won't let me make the changes. I need to learn how to win him over.
I get frustrated at how little work I seem to get done over the course of an 8-hour day. There just doesn't seem to be enough time.
I have trouble getting my views across to the younger people around me, and I could use help being more forceful, more assertive.
Well, I can't seem to get my staff involved, get recommendations for improvements, or at least support for the changes that I think are necessary. It's as if no one seems to care.
I've had a hard time dealing with the guys I used to work with. I need to know how to establish a new relationship with them.
I just want to learn. I'd like to get enough skills so that I've really got a fair shot at moving up the ladder. I figure the more I learn, the faster I'll go, the higher I'll get.
Well, I spent a lot of time working with other managers in specific projects, and I need help in keeping control over the budget, over the timing, and even on the end product.
Okay, I've recorded your objectives, and we'll be taking care of all of these over here in the next 6 days. They're very ambitious, but you know about ambitious. You've made your mark as a manager. You've shown leadership, enthusiasm, and the willingness to take initiative a little bit more than your peers have, perhaps, okay? And you're skilled, and we're going to build on those skills. Now, in the past, it was sufficient to fly by the seat of your pants. You took your best shot as a manager, but now people and business seem to have become more complicated, more demanding. So we're going to develop the knowledge and the skills and the attitude to respond to those demands. We're going to reinforce and develop and refine the skills that you need in order to manage. This is going to take a lot of work, both in and out of the classroom. I'd like to make a point with you that learning is not limited to the classroom. What you learn and practice here, you have to relearn and repractice in the real world, okay? I'd like to convince you of the need for ongoing training and skills upgrading. Now that's not my own thought. We've assembled the views of some managers, and they're going to talk to us on tape about the importance of training for managers. And watch the monitor. Here we go. Movie time. Okay? And here we go.
All of business is undergoing a tremendous rate of change, not all of it voluntary. I think competitive pressures around the world have indicated to us that in a lot of ways we're out of date and we've got a lot of catch-up to do. And that catching up can only be accomplished through a better educated management.
When we get new managers, we make
every effort to provide them with the tools to handle the responsibility that we give them. We're far from perfect in how well we do, but we do have very specific managerial kinds of training.
I've been part of courses that deal with sales. I've been part of courses that deal with leadership skills, as well another course that I just took a year ago called Exceptional Management Practices, which was probably the most interesting course I've been on in the sense that it used actual feedback from my staff on how I perform as a manager.
My thoughts are that if you want to get close to your customer and you want to understand what their needs are and respond to them effectively, you must train your managers first. They have to understand what's happening with the organization, what its goals and objectives are, and then how to work through their staff to accomplish those things and meet the customer's needs.
What we're trying to do is we're trying to train a person before they become a manager. So we're working at the supervisory level. We're training them on all sorts of things, whether it's just management style or whether it's budgets or whether how things fit together, dealing with people, time management. We've realized that you can't, it's not fair to create a manager and then train them. You should actually be training them beforehand.
Okay, all right, practice. Now that's what's going to make these skills come alive, okay? And that's just the beginning, because you can continually upgrade your skills, just like adding tools to a toolbox. Now for this purpose, we have the manual, okay, which will act as a guide and resource to the workshop. It's filled with information and exercises that you can complete at home and at work, okay, your manual. Now let's take a peek at the overall goals of the workshop. And here they are: to demonstrate and to practice several key skills involved in managing and to steer you to the resources that can help you develop your skills. Okay, so we'll just post that over there. In addition to these goals, you've identified some yourself, and we'll be taking care of those and then some. All right, so let's get at it. Now, first, we're going to turn to the Centerville Feed and Seed Store. What? Yes, an organization that's going to teach us what's important about being a manager. So ask yourself this question as you watch this film: what is the most important function of the manager? Are you ready? Very exciting here. Here we go.
Welcome to Centerville, a small town nestled far from the hustle and bustle of the Big Smoke. Here in Centerville, the one business that employs most of the townsfolk is the popular Feed and Seed Store. And for good reason. It's the local hardware, clothing, grocery, and department store. The Feed and Seed Store is owned by Mr. Pete Snow. He's known far and wide as a great manager. And because of his skills, people come from all around to learn from him. Bill Beaver came from Eastern University, a recent MBA graduate. Bob Badger, on the other hand, started early with the Feed and Seed. He joined the team fresh out of Centerville High. Like Bob, Portia Pigeon has been with the Feed and Seed for several years. It didn't take her long after graduating from the local community college to realize that the Feed and Seed was the place for her. To round out their education, all three came to study under the tutelage of Mr. Snow. They were told to watch, listen, and learn. And that's what they've been doing. They've seen Pete Snow involving the whole team in decision-making, keeping everyone up to speed, and managing projects on time and on budget. And most importantly, they've seen how Pete's excellence rubs off on those around him. People learn from Pete, and Pete learns from them. He knows that each of his employees has their own area of expertise, but you have to know where the expertise lies and how to tap it. As any good manager knows, you can't do it on your own. And that is Pete's first message.
Okay, we're going to see a lot of Pete and Bill and Bob and Portia in the next 6 days, but the initial message is you can't do it alone. Now, management is many things, and I'm going to record what you think the most important functions of a manager is. What is the most important function of a manager? Who's first?
I'll be first.
Okay.
How about staying on budget and on time? The manager is responsible for bottom line, profits and losses.
Okay, real good.
That's important.
Okay,
So
super.
the
All right,
main
Mario?
function of a manager is to keep the workers happy. After that, the bottom line takes care of itself.
Right, absolutely. Good lunches, long coffee breaks, and high wages.
And Becky.
Sure, I agree. Your people should be happy. But it's more important that the manager involve her people with the decision-making. Make sure that everyone knows what's going on.
Okay, and Kathy.
Yeah, without the manager, there's chaos. I think the manager has to organize and direct the work of others.
Okay.
I think that it's not what the manager does. He or she has to set a good example, be a role model.
Well, I think managers have to be leaders. They have to be there for the people. I mean, it's not just enough to set a good example. You've got to be approachable and available.
But the manager isn't a doer. I think the main function is getting the work done through others.
Delegation then, so, you know.
All right, well, there's loads of variety here, and two things seem to come out, the what and the how of management, right? Now, we're going to focus on the how part of management because the what is controlled generally by company policy, whereas the how is dictated by yourself. Hence the name of the program, How Will You Manage? Okay, all right. Well, we know that management is a people business, and the manager's first responsibility is to work with and for the people. Right? So we'll develop the skills needed to get the most out of your people to maximize their potential. But before you do that, what do you need to know about them?
You need to know who they are. You need to know their strengths and their weaknesses.
Okay, George.
You have to understand the type of work they're doing.
Because they're looking to you for direction.
Okay. We need to understand the work of our subordinates. Although a successful manager doesn't need to be able to do the work of the subordinates, has to get the work done, as Pete Snow told us, eh? So we have to have awareness of people and the resources around us, but another key point is self-awareness, awareness of our own strengths and limitations. All right, let's have a coffee break, and then we'll take a few moments, okay, to talk about those first few critical days on the job, okay? We're going to be focusing in on the skills required of the new manager. I call them basic survival skills. If you think back of those first few critical days on the job and how you felt, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to record those. Okay, so how did you feel? Who'd like to start?
I'd been a trainee for 3 years, you see, so I was very excited about finally getting the job.
Okay, so you were excited. Who else?
I mean, all I can remember is total fear that I was going to do something incredibly stupid.
You?
Not me. I don't know.
Okay, so that covers both ends of the spectrum, doesn't it, okay? But even seasoned managers feel nervous, okay? They all have butterflies. The only difference is, of course, is their butterflies fly in formation. All right, were there other feelings that you had, maybe? Becky?
Well, I remember the fear, that's for sure. But I also remember being confident that I could really help the people working in my department.
Good.
I was worried about the guys that I used to work with, how they would feel about me now that I was their boss.
Same thing for me. I mean, I knew there had to be some changes made, but I didn't know how they'd be received by the people who'd been there for a long time.
Right, okay.
Well, I was nervous, even though I'd managed before. But I was also determined to do a good job.
Okay, this is real good input, okay? These are all very normal feelings, and getting to deal with them is a part of this survival piece. There's this importance around self-awareness and having an understanding of what you can and can't do, and have the honesty to evaluate yourself. Well, of course, you have to also be aware of the feelings of others, as Mario and Bob pointed out. At least have a feeling of how those people felt who got passed over in the promotion, how those people feel who were left back on the bench while you're the manager. Well, what I'd like you to do now is we're going to spend about 15 minutes, and I'd like you to discuss the tricks and the skills and the resources that you applied for those first few days on the job. What we'll do is discuss those for 15 minutes, and we'll come back and report in group. Okay, the do's and don'ts of your first week as a manager. And first group, and who's going to speak for you?
Well, we had a really good discussion. Some differences of opinion about how active a manager should be, but we did agree on the following key do's. First of all, find out what your superiors and your employees expect from you. Get out of your office and listen to the opinions and views of those around you.
Okay, real good. And what about the what-nots?
Well, you don't tell the boss you're after his job. But more importantly, you don't stir up the cauldron until you have all the ingredients.
Okay, well, say a little bit more about that part.
Well, it's just that you should be familiar with the entire situation before you race ahead with any decisions.
Okay, real good. Now, this is the second group, and Kathy, you going to speak for them?
First of all, you need to get to know how the office works. So procedure manuals, files, correspondence. And secondly, you have to make certain that your employees know who you are. Dispel the fear of the unknown. Let them get to know you. And for don'ts, we came up with, don't start running down the past manager. He or she may have had friends. And most important, don't make any major decisions in the first week, because you can't possibly know everything that's going on.
Okay, great. And who's speaking for your group?
I am. Well, we discussed similar points, but we also came up with the importance of organizing your time. Don't let your employees see you in a disorganized manner, and don't hide yourself away in your office.
Okay. Well, the best advice comes from the experts, of course, and that's you. You know what works and what doesn't work. I'd like to focus in a little bit on something that Kathy's group came up with, and that was...
Don't do anything major in the first week.
That's exactly right. Take time to get your bearings. Let's have a look and see what Pete Snow has to say about that.
After several weeks, Bill Beaver was asked to manage the shipping department of the Centerville Feed and Seed. Being a recent university grad, Bill was keen to put his MBA into practice. So he marched up and down the office, chewing over the things he saw as inefficient. In order for this Beaver to be top dog, Bill felt some big changes were in order. So in the seclusion of his office, Bill decided to reorganize the flow of paperwork to make sure nothing was late. He determined that by doubling the number of checks and balances, the company could track each and every delivery. More importantly, as he learned in school, Bill's new system would surely eliminate all employee theft. So Bill assembled his people and outlined the plan. But Bill hadn't done his homework. For starters, nothing had ever been stolen from the Feed and Seed. And as if that weren't enough, there had never even been a late delivery. Bill's system might have had some merit in the big smoke, but it didn't fit the Centerville Feed and Seed at all. Both morale and respect for Bill hit rock bottom. Pete's message to Bill was a simple one. You have to find out what your people need and then help them get it. You can't always go by the book. Planning without input from your staff is the first step on the road to disaster.
Okay.
Who did the animation?
Well, Bill obviously committed a fundamental error early in his management career, and some of the suggestions that you had earlier would have really helped him to take care of that. Let me just post this, and then we can take off from there. Okay? All right. You need to listen to your staff. You need to get out of the office. Okay? Now, we have a mystery word today, and it's 6 letters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right? And this mystery word is the key to survival in your first few days, okay? Any ideas on the key word? Becky?
Well, I'm thinking about the animation. Bill made guesses about what was needed. Reflect?
Reflect.
No, wait, that's 7, not 6 letters.
All right, George. Well, Bill spent most of his time in his office, right? The first time anybody really even saw him was when he dumped the big new plan on them, right? So how about be seen? How's that?
I don't know, but...
Well, I think that Bill was basing his decisions on what he'd read in a book and not on what was happening in reality. So I think the key word here is vision. Vision, yeah.
You mentioned listen to your staff. Listening is a key skill. If Bill had listened, he would have realized he wasn't on the right track.
Good point. Okay. Well, in a new position, you know that you need the sensitivity and the care and the wisdom to find out what your employees and superiors are doing, where they're at. And you need to really consider before you act. You have to go out and find out the information that's required. You have to...
Assess.
You have to assess.
You have to assess everything before you make a move, right?
Let's just fill in these words here, okay? A-S-E-S-S. You have to assess, okay? Really what we're talking about is know what's expected of you, your boss and your employees, and listen to what they think your role is as a manager. Find out what you can do to help them, basically. And so your job is to assess the needs, but also to assess the means of meeting those needs. And those can be resources like human and physical, and also trusting your perceptions, trusting your instincts, and that's also part of a good assessment. You don't want to barge in. You don't want to start changing things. What you want to do is... All right, okay, that's the key word for today. Assess. All right, if you'll just take your books and turn to Module 1, okay? What we're going to do is review the steps that we just discussed. So we'll just take a minute to do that, and then we'll take a short break, okay? All right.
Nice to get outside for a change.
Yeah, looks like the sun's going to come up.
You know, I was thinking about what he was saying, about the need to take the people who you're working with into consideration. Because if you don't have a good relationship with your workers, you're basically toast.
I don't know. I don't agree with that last bit he said about not doing anything up front. You have to address problems the minute they arise. That's why they pay you the big bucks.
Wait a minute, Paul. I don't think he's saying don't solve the problems. All he wants you to do is to look ahead and think through the implications. If you try making changes right off the bat on day one, you're looking for trouble, believe me, Paul.
Come on, Mario. If you see there are problems and you don't react, people are going to think you're incompetent. As soon as you identify a problem, you have to act. It's a matter of credibility. People are going to think you're a lousy manager.
Well, maybe. But I remember I had this one manager a few years back. Came in like a bull in a china shop. He didn't talk to any of us workers at all. Well, of course, there was almost a mutiny. But after all the dust had settled and we had this guy moved out, I realized that his ideas were really pretty good.
You guys on the floor really react like that? I mean, you got that kind of power?
You better believe it. The guys on the floor have a lot of power. And that can make or break a manager's career. Remember that. And it's time to get back in. Let's go.
We just spent a lot of time assessing the environment. And that includes the attitudes and beliefs of your people. You also have to think of their assessment of you. Now, everyone has their own style. And when you're new in the job, you haven't had time to develop your style. So what are people seeing? How are they assessing your style?
By the way you present yourself to them and by the way you communicate with them.
Exactly. That's all they've got to go on initially. You know, we have a tendency to naturally fit into 4 kinds of blocks, 4 styles. And we have the people pleaser, the careful thinker, the go-getter, and the creative dreamer, okay? And the people pleaser is the warm, sensitive, good listener, loyal, patient, helpful person who's also impulsive, defensive, and easily swayed in decision-making. Then we have the careful thinker, okay? And the careful thinker is organized and logical and analytical, and the flip side is unemotional and maybe a little stubborn, okay? Right? Then you have the go-getter, and the go-getter gets things done no matter what. Assertive, energetic, and resourceful, and manages, however, at the expense of being short-sighted and a little domineering, okay? Then you have this creative dreamer. Okay? The visionary, the daydream becomes the best-selling feature of the company often enough, but sometimes impractical and impatient and has an overactive ego. Well, let's see what style are you, okay? Let's find out. Okay, I've copied this communication styles questionnaire out of the manual. Let's take some time and complete it, and then we'll talk about it, okay? All right, well, from your responses, we've got 2 people pleasers, 3 careful thinkers, 2 go-getters, and 1 creative dreamer. Okay, what did we learn about ourselves in that exercise?
Well, the questionnaire made me realize some things about being a people pleaser, and I do admit that is me. I tend to oversimplify, and I take too long to get to the point, all in the spirit of being diplomatic.
Okay. Get to the point.
And Kathy?
Well, I find that the useful part of the exercise is forcing yourself to look at your weaknesses. The careful thinker, for example, makes decisions so slowly that they appear indecisive. Too many questions, explanations, alternatives.
I'm told I have the opposite problem. Go-getters don't take the time to hear objections, and they reach conclusions too quickly. I still say those are pretty good habits, but I can see the other side of the coin.
Well, the manual says that creative dreamers are, they raise too many issues in scattered fashion, so, and I admit I am one, so I have a tendency not to regard already implemented systems that are in place.
Well, each style has its own merits and its own problems, okay? But getting in touch is very important. You have to be natural as a person, but you have to get in touch in order to be able to change and adjust to advantage. What would I mean by adjusting style to advantage?
Well, it's like you said, you got to know yourself, right? You emphasize the strengths and chip away at the weaknesses. Go-getters, for example. It's probably great to get things done in a hurry, but they could also use some help long-term planning so that they're organized over the long haul.
Well, okay, let's take that a little further. What do the people pleasers need to be more focused and be organized as managers?
Be a little less people-geared, I suppose. A good example would be delegating. People pleasers tend to be too helpful to be good delegators themselves, but delegating sure frees up your time to be more efficient without being overworked and out of control.
Careful thinkers, on the other hand, should probably be more people-geared, but if it's not your style, it's not your style.
Yeah, but careful thinkers could use their analytical minds to organize the workspace more efficiently or develop more efficient system for the staff, because people see these changes and they admire the careful thinking manager for making them.
Okay, well, everyone has their own style, and knowing your style is the first step in adjusting and capitalizing on that style, because you need to present yourself as self-organized and credible. Okay, so the last subject of today is the critical need to be well organized, and that's to build and protect your credibility as a manager, so that when you say you're going to do something, it's done, okay? And to do that, you really have to have a sense of where your time goes, because those time wasters make you look out of control, and the trademark of a successful manager is to appear in control at all times. So, and this is true especially in terms of your personal time. And you know there's got to be 1,000 different methods, devices, processes to organize your time. What have you found useful in your work? Becky?
I find it really helpful to have my personal goals and my objectives written down, both for my short and long term.
I need some quiet thinking time at the end of the day or the beginning. Just a few minutes to make a plan for the next day.
Okay.
I have a list too, but my problem is that I can only get about halfway through it before, the interruptions of the course of the day, and the list is out the window.
Well, you really need to set your priorities and kind of work on the high priority items, and then if you have time left over, then you're going to work on those low priority items, okay? And I agree that you have to have some personal time, some time without people interrupting you in the office and away from the telephone so you can get those high priority items finished. I think it's okay to let people know that you're just not available. Right? Well, speaking of time available, we seem to have breezed through the day. And what we've done is we've built on organization and assessment. And I think you've got a thorough grasp that you need to look at your resources and surroundings as a manager. And the good news is we have homework. And that's in preparation for day 2, okay? Okay, relax. It's a team project. All right, it's a team project. And the task is to look at 3 effective and 3 less than effective management practices in this training center, okay? All right? And for this purpose, we have some task sheets taken from your manual, and it's a checklist which you'll find useful in your office. So I'll hand those out now. On strike. And also, we need to review today's session. And if you want to refresh and remind yourself, it's located in Module 1 of your manual. Okay? So the first thing that we looked at was what a manager does, and more importantly, how a manager manages. And we know that it's to get the job done through people. Okay? We went on at great length about those first few critical days and weeks on the job and what a manager should and shouldn't do. We looked at the importance of accurate and sensitive assessment of the environment and of the people in that environment. You also had the opportunity to assess yourself in that personal communication style questionnaire and look at the impact on how you manage. The key word for today is, all right, okay, that's the key word for today, assess. And I've had a great time. Thank you for your involvement and your input, and I look forward to day 2 of How Will You Manage? All right. Okay.
To order the $39 learning package for this new course, please have your Visa or MasterCard ready and call Toronto 967-14.